Greetings. Well, let's dive right in. Delegation as we know it is dead. It's long gone. Long gone are the times when we could nurture people along through mentoring them for years and knowing that they're going to stick around. That's just not happening anymore. If you're a founder or a CEO of a multi-million dollar company, you have a team, you know what I'm talking about. People are retiring in droves, and even if it's not droves in your company, chances are there are a few key people who are nearing retirement age, and you're worried about what knowledge are they going to take with them. And then the younger people, they don't stay that long, or at least they don't tend to stay that long. And there's this concern, okay, how can we train them in such a way that A, they get it, and B, they stay? And then we have AI, and AI is transforming your industry way more than industries that are not nearly as knowledge driven as yours is. So, whether that is in the area of science or in the area of finance or many of the business areas, or legal or architecture, engineering, all of those fields, they're all knowledge driven. So, in this broadcast, I'm going to talk about exactly how the new way, the effective way of delegating works today. But first, I want to share with you a quick story. Imagine a business owner of a multi-million dollar company that does some pretty techy things in the software development space. And the founder is very technical, and so is his partner. And the area that the software is used for is also very technical. But as you can imagine, the software developers they acquired on the team, when they're first hired, they have no knowledge of that other area. That, how are the users of the software? What's their daily workflow? They have no idea. We're talking in this case about legislative drafting. Just the word alone makes you realize, man, that is a field in itself. And the challenge, of course, is that when you have a situation where the founder is very technical and is basically the only or one of two people who know that interplay between the technical aspects of the software, which is innovative, and then this technical field that they're serving, in this case, legislative drafting. If he's just the only one or one of two people who know this, then they're real bottlenecks. And the question is, how do you delegate something like that? Well, when you have people on your team for many years, then hopefully some of that wisdom is going to rub off. And it's basically a process of repeatedly asking questions, getting answers, and slowly but surely learning the ropes. But that doesn't really work completely. It never really did. But now it works even less well. And so I call that delegating the tough tasks. And the problem is, another problem with that is that it's kind of like a knowledge onion. There's different layers to it. On the outer layer is the knowledge that you know you have, and provided you have enough time and you're willing, you can pass that knowledge on to other people. And of course, you then still have to hope that they stick around long enough for that to be effective. But then the next layer and the next layer and the next layer, all the way to the core of that onion, the knowledge gets deeper and deeper. So in this particular case, there's deep knowledge that dates back 40 years, or at least 30. And so that's increasingly, as you go deeper and deeper into the onion, that's knowledge that you don't even know you have. You have it, you use it automatically. It is an integral part of your thought process as you solve problems, etc. And that is the really tough stuff that's very hard to delegate, because how can you teach something that you don't even know, you're not even aware of, that the fact that you're using that in your decision making or solving problems or just tackling that task? And so the problem with this whole delegation in a company like yours, growing multi-million-dollar company, you want to grow further, and also, of course, you want to build an asset that at some point you can pass on, and you can, cash in the fruits of your labor at the end of, your career, so to speak, and sell that company. As long as there's such deep knowledge that's only in your brain, that's going to be very difficult to do. 85% of companies can't even be sold. And some of the ones that can be sold, the founder finds himself, working with the new owner as an employee for 1 or 2 years, which is often a pretty disheartening and unpleasant experience. Often it doesn't really go very well. Anyway, okay, so what do we do about that? There's a concept called, or a framework called, brilliance mining. And essentially, it's about pulling knowledge out of your brain and not just giving it to people, but making it immortal, codifying it, writing it down, creating videos, creating training portals. And all of that sounds like, oh my gosh, yeah, that sounds great in principle, but I don't have the time for that. I get it. And, sometimes it feels undoable. There are tasks that I can relate to that. There are tasks that we know we need to do, but they seem undoable. I can remember just recently I was in Nepal when I went trekking, and I came to this like staircase essentially on this path. I was hiking to the base camp of Annapurna, which is the eighth tallest mountain in the world. Anyway, so we had already hiked several days. We had hiked several hours that day, and now we get to this humongous staircase that goes from my feet all the way to the sky, it seems. And some of those steps are just steep. So how did I tackle that? I tackled it simply by going one step at a time. I couldn't focus on the whole thing. But what was cool was that after even just 20 steps or 50 steps or 100 steps, you can see the progress, and that's very encouraging. So with the person I mentioned earlier, there's so much deep knowledge, but what was great was that even within the first few sessions of extracting knowledge, it was useful and it could be it was put into play. And so that's really encouraging, that you don't have to do the entirety before it starts to become useful. It becomes useful very quickly. And I have a pet peeve, I got to tell you, and that is misleading advertising where people go like, oh yeah, build a $5.5 million business in 90 days. Okay, how often does that happen? What's the real story, etc. So what I'd like to do is, be real with you and say, hey, yeah, it's going to take a little bit of effort, but actually it's going to be fun because you will realize just how much you know and how much you've forgotten that you know. And it will be amazing to put that into play. So with that, I want to leave you with one practical tip. And that is, first of all, write down what is a tough task, just one tough task that you would like to delegate, but you don't feel comfortable delegating. Write that down. And then think about how could you go about actually delegating that task? What have you done before to attempt to delegate that task, and what happened? Write that down. What was the breakdown? And then the next step would be to write down, all the steps that you can think of that are associated with that task. And then find someone in your organization who doesn't already know how to do this, and work with them, teach them, and then give them the opportunity with your supervision, so to speak, to actually do this task, and see which steps that you do does this other person not do because you didn't tell them those steps, because you didn't think of them. That's a way to find those gaps in the instructions, so to speak, or in the training. Now, we're going to talk about this a lot more in actually tomorrow's Q&A, which is about knowledge transfer, because that's what we're talking about. So you can delegate the tough things even. And we're also going to talk about AI, because AI is also a huge game changer, as you know. And we can use some AI tools to actually make the creation of training easier. We can also think about which of those things that we want to delegate we can just automate, and which ones do we have to delegate to people, and then perhaps use AI to help us create those. So if you're interested in that, please join us tomorrow for the Q&A, and I'll put the link below. And with this, I just want to remind you, delegation, the way we used to, is dead, and we need to adapt to it. And you know what? It's easier than you think, one little step at a time. I'll see you at the Q&A, I hope, tomorrow. Cheers.